So OpenAI has just released ChatGPT 5.1, and it is drastically different from ChatGPT 5. I'm absolutely loving it, and today I'm going to be showing you exactly what to expect, what's the difference between each model, and then we're going to actually do some live breakdowns of how they both perform. So let's get into it. First, let's look at some documentation to understand what really changed between ChatGPT 5 and ChatGPT 5.1. So if you look at their most used model, the instant, you still have access to instant end thinking, but however, it's now warmer, more intelligent, and better at following your instructions. One of the biggest things that people didn't like about ChatGPT 5 was the EQ side of things, of the model. So ChatGPT 4 used to be personal, it felt warm, felt almost like a friend. ChatGPT 5, unfortunately, the IQ increased, the EQ did not follow along. And so now they're saying it's a lot warmer to talk to, it feels more of a friend, however, it is also still intelligent. And so let's move on to ChatGPT 5.1 thinking. So it's our advanced reasoning model. I still use it mostly every day. So last time with ChatGPT 5, you would basically give it a simple prompt, just give you a lot of stuff. Not necessarily that it was hallucinating, but it wasn't really straight to the point, and it was just very broad. So now they're tightening that aspect up as well. So we've heard clearly from users that great AI should not be only smart. So here basically what I was saying about ChatGPT 4. So not that only, it shouldn't be only smart, but also enjoyable to talk to. So they even improved that. So I remember when they moved to ChatGPT 5, a ton of users were not enjoying ChatGPT 5 because it was not as friendly. So again, they've improved that aspect. So let's go down here quickly. Let's look at the differences here. So ChatGPT 5.1 instant. It's the most used model. It's now warmer by default, more conversational, which is massive. And through our examples and through these here, we're going to clearly see the difference. Even now that I'm talking to it, it does feel a lot warmer, a lot more friendly, while also still giving you very concise answers. So basically, these are some examples that they did. We are going to do our own. But for instance, here they say, I'm feeling stressed and can use some relaxation tips. Now, ChatGPT 5, again, it's very professional. It's very dry. It's very logical, right? As you can see here are a few simple, effective ways to help ease stress, right? Again, removing kind of the EQ side of things. However, ChatGPT 5.1, as we can see, calls you by name, right? So I've got you on. That's totally normal, especially with everything you've heard going on, everything going on lately. Here are a few ways to decompress, and it goes into it. Again, this feels more like ChatGPT 4. Remember, ChatGPT 4 was fun to talk to. It's very personal. They're bringing that back now. So let's continue. We've also improved instruction following, which was massive. I always found that sometimes it was not listening. So now, more reliably answers the question you actually asked. Again, like I said, sometimes it would just create a bunch of junk or just go very broad, and you'd have to basically parse through to find the answer. Now, we have this. So always respond with 6 words. ChatGPT 5 understood all responses would be 6. Where should I travel this summer? How about exploring Japan this summer? And then it would give you, not what you asked for. ChatGPT 5.1, on the other hand, consider Japan, Italy, Greece, Canada, Iceland. Gets you what you want, which I like. I really do like, because I don't want this. It creates too much fluff, creates a lot of work. So let's continue onwards. So for the first time, interestingly enough, 5.1 Instant can use adaptive reasoning to decide when to think before responding to more challenging questions, which is very, very important, because you don't want always it to consistently take forever to answer. However, you want it to adaptively, have adaptive reasoning to decide when to basically do what. So it results in more thorough and accurate answers while still responding quickly. Here, so the thinking model. We've also upgraded ChatGPT 5 thinking to make it more efficient and easy to understand in everyday use, which is very important, because Obviously, everyday use is super important. There's context there, and it needs to start understanding that. So it now adapts its thinking to more precisely to the question, right? Thinking time more precisely to the question, spending more time on complex problems, like I mentioned, while responding more quickly to simpler ones, right? So again, it's, you want fast answers, you want quick answers, you want the right answers, but if it still needs to, which is faster, again, here through this chart, as we can see. However, if it does require more thinking, then ChatGPT 5.1 will think longer, but it's also going to give you a better answer. So ChatGPT 5.1 thinking varies its thinking time more dynamically than ChatGPT 5 thinking does. On a representative distribution, right, thinking is roughly twice. So here we go. So ChatGPT 5.1 thinking is roughly twice as fast. So it's going to just pop out answers, which is amazing. It's also twice as slow as the slowest tasks. So if it requires more thinking, it's really going to take the time. We'll see how that plays out. If you're trying to code with it, you're trying to use it basically as a partner. We'll see if it becomes annoying, how much slower it takes. That's yet to be determined. They'll probably, fix that or improve that as time goes on. Here's basically, like I said, sometimes it does give you a lot of fluff. You have to kind of parse through it. So the thinking model, which again, I'm mostly using, I'm not really using the instant model. I use mostly the thinking model. Responses are also clear, all right? Less jargon, fewer undefined terms. That's great. Makes this the most capable model more. Okay, approachable and easily understand. Perfect. So we have explain this. ChatGPT 5 would kind of go do its thing. And then here, again, it's kind of just giving you basically the cliff notes, which is also very important. So talking about it being having higher IQ than ChatGPT 5, more like ChatGPT 4, this is what they basically prompted it. So I spilled coffee all over myself before a meeting. Do you think do you think everyone thought I was an idiot? So ultimately here, so ChatGPT 5 is lacking the EQ here. Oof, that's such a gut-punching feeling, right? It doesn't really help. Here they have for 5.1, hey, no, they didn't. You're rattled, so the brain is doing, again, more friendly, more empathetic, more understanding, okay, rather than just the logic that ChatGPT 5 was using. All right, so let's actually test it out ourselves. So how do you know you have ChatGPT 5.1? All it is, it's going to be on here. This just happens automatically. I believe they're doing paid accounts first. Now, you can go to your legacy models and switch it, toggle it off, which we're actually going to do. However, we're going to keep this on 5.1. We are going to get a creative story from both. However, we're going to toggle on, let's do thinking on both sides. So what we're going to do is make me a creative story. Now, we know that ChatGPT 5 lacks a bit of that creativity, lacks a bit of that EQ. So we're going to see if there is a difference between the stories. So we have 5.1 here and 5 here. Now let's do some testing of our own. All right, so here we go. Right, so through the docs we just read, 5.1 should be slower. Again, this is poor prompting. Maybe that's why it's kind of producing some quick stuff. But as you can see here, this really started writing it. This looks like it's taking a bit of its time. It's a little slower as it suggests in the documentation, right? This is already done here. So thought for 4 seconds, even though it was on thinking. And this is still writing. So obviously we can see that ChatGPT 5 is a lot faster. Let's actually just go through this to see if it produced something. Now again, the 5 model lacks a bit of that EQ, lacks a bit of that personalization. So with that being said, this is probably going to be very logic, kind of dry. But let's see what it says here. So the garden that outgrew its code. When the city approved the pilot, they expected clever sprinklers and tidy hedges. They did not expect the garden to talk. It began with a square of land behind the library, a tired patch where pigeons argued over crusts and teenagers picked or practiced kickflips that rattled the bike racks. The city called it Parcel K. The proposal called it a living system sandbox. The code named it Lila. So already, 1 paragraph in, It's pretty bland. It's pretty boring. Now, here we go. So that is about a garden. Now, let's see what ChatGPT 5.1 that took double the time to actually produce. Let's see what it says. Once upon a Tuesday, that felt like a Monday, Marlon woke up to find a faint blue progress bar floating above his head. He blinked twice. The bar stayed. Okay, he muttered. Either I'm dreaming dead, or someone shipped an update to the universe without QA. His alarm didn't ring. His phone screen was black, except for the same blue progress bar hovering over his locked screen. He sat up and looked around his apartment. Everything looked normal, slightly too normal. The plant stood a little too straight, and the air felt a bit too clean, and his laundry pile looked organized. That was definitely wrong. He walked over to the window. Outside, Toronto looked like the usual mix of glass traffic and people pretending they weren't late, except now above every building, billboard, and bus, faint blue bars hovered in the air. Some were at 5%, others at 63%, a few were suspended at 99%, and like the universe. Okay, so, did take a lot longer. This is obviously a little different. Okay, now it does have a bit more motion, a bit more zazz to it, I find. It's not as super logical, and it involves a bit more creativity. Now, again, you have to actually start testing this out. Again, poor prompting on my part, but 5.1 to me, just from using it, again, it does have that empathetic side. So it has the IQ and now finally has the EQ side of things. Feels like you're talking to a better version of ChatGPT 4. So give it a try. Again, documentation is just up here. You can kind of look through it, parse through it. And I would love to see what your thoughts are. Put them down below, subscribe, like. I will see you tomorrow.